True Walmart horror stories. I'm a woman who works in a typical office 5 days a week. Despite that, cooking is one of my favorite hobbies, and I usually prepare dinner for myself almost every night. To gather fresh ingredients, I often stop by a Walmart store on my way home from work. It's conveniently located just a mile away from my apartment, and they usually offer the best prices, so it became my go-to store for produce and protein. The incident I'm about to share occurred a few months ago during one of my routine visits to Walmart. As usual, I would only pick up 4 or 5 ingredients, occasionally grabbing a few additional items. Since I finished work between 3, I'm a female who works in a standard office 5 days a week. However, one of my passions is cooking, so I find myself going to the store for fresh ingredients quite often. There's a Walmart conveniently located about a mile from my apartment, making it a frequent stop for me due to their affordable prices. While I do occasionally shop at other stores, Walmart is my most common choice. This story takes place a few months ago when I stopped by Walmart after work as I usually do. Typically, I would only grab a handful of ingredients and sometimes a few other necessities. Since I finished work anywhere between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., I would arrive at Walmart shortly after that. The store was usually moderately busy during those times. One day, I noticed an employee near the produce section who greeted me. It caught my attention because the next time I visited, he greeted me again while I was in the same area. I hadn't really paid much attention to the employees before, so I hadn't noticed him until then. He was bald, had a small dark beard, and was somewhat of a large build. He seemed friendly, and on the second occasion, he even asked me how my day was going. We engaged in brief casual conversation for about 30 seconds before I politely excused myself to continue my shopping. Over the next couple of weeks, this scenario repeated itself whenever I went shopping at Walmart. The same employee would say hello and strike up a conversation with me. Initially, it didn't bother me much since he was always pleasant. However, as time went on, his questions gradually became more personal. He inquired about my work, where I lived, and if I was coming from work. These inquiries started to make me feel uneasy. I wasn't sure if he was just an overly friendly employee or if there was something more to his behavior. Despite my concerns, I convinced myself that he was simply a nice guy, and it didn't bother me too much. That is, until one day when I was walking through Walmart during my usual shopping routine, and he approached me again. He asked the usual question about my day, and then proceeded to ask for my phone number. I responded politely but declined his request. I was afraid that accepting might give him the wrong impression, and honestly, it felt quite strange. In retrospect, I realized I hadn't seen him engaged in any actual work during my visits. He always seemed to be standing around waiting to talk to me. The man appeared offended when I declined, and as I started to explain my reasons, he abruptly turned and walked away. His demeanor completely changed. I resumed my shopping, and he had moved further into the grocery aisles, fortunately away from the items I needed. I continued browsing for about 10 more minutes before proceeding to check out and leave. On that particular day, I parked in the back of the parking lot. As I got into my car, I noticed the Walmart employee sitting in a car not too far from mine. Looking back, I'm not sure how I noticed him, but I'm grateful that I did. I assumed he was either taking a break or had finished his shift for the day. He didn't appear to be looking in my direction, which was a relief. I pulled out of my parking space only to see him do the same and exit the parking lot right behind me. I watched him through my rearview mirror as he followed the same route I took to get back to my apartment. After about a minute, I arrived at my apartment complex, and a sense of unease washed over me. I became certain that this man did not live in my complex. I drove around the parking lot, hesitant to go straight to my building. I was suspicious throughout this time. His car remained behind mine. Realizing that he would likely continue following me no matter where I went, I made the decision to leave. I didn't have a specific destination in mind, but I needed to get away. I drove down the quiet road near my complex until I reached a busier one. I signaled and merged onto the busy road, which was congested due to the approaching rush hour at around 5 p.m. With the man's car still trailing me, I patiently waited for a gap in traffic. After about 30 seconds, an opportunity arose, and I swiftly pulled out, causing the car behind me to honk in protest. However, the man following me had no chance to merge, allowing me to distance myself from him. I continued driving for a short while before making a turn. It was then that I had the idea to return to the Walmart store, fueled by anger. I drove straight back and headed to the customer service counter. When I arrived, I immediately reported the incident of one of their employees following me home. The Walmart staff seemed disorganized, and they had to call someone from the produce section for assistance. As I explained what had happened, they informed me that no employee fitting. I recall a Walmart store near my location that used to operate 24 hours a day. It appears that many Walmarts used to have round-the-clock service, but in recent years, most of the ones I visited now close around 10 p.m. Perhaps this change is due to incidents like the one I'm about to recount, which took place several years ago, around 2014. During that time, I had a job with unpredictable working hours, often finishing late at night. On one occasion, I ended work close to 3 a.m., feeling exhausted and hungry. Since there were no open restaurants nearby, I decided to stop by the 24-hour Walmart on my way home. I thought I could browse the snack aisle and find something to eat and drink. When I entered the store, I noticed it was nearly empty, with only a few employees sporadically visible. As I made my way to the snack aisle, I took my time exploring since I was unsure of what I wanted. I often struggle with deciding on food choices. After browsing for about 5 minutes, I suddenly felt an unsettling sensation that someone was watching me. I glanced around and noticed a man at the far end of the aisle staring in my direction. He was tall and thin, wearing a black Adidas sweatshirt. When he realized I was looking at him, he continued standing there, not attending to anything on the shelves. His behavior struck me as peculiar. Trying not to dwell on it, I refocused on examining the food options. However, as I moved to the next aisle, I noticed the same man lurking around the corner, making eye contact with me from the end of the aisle. This became progressively stranger and more unsettling. I quickly grabbed a bag of trail mix and decided to head toward the back of the store, hugging the walls. When I reached the far corner, intending to return to one of the main walkways, I was surprised to find the man already standing there, fixated on me. Feeling followed, I began walking around the store, and the man seemed to be shadowing my every move. It was incredibly frustrating. Throughout the ordeal, the man's face remained almost expressionless, and he never uttered a word. Fed up, I eventually decided to proceed to the checkout area. There was only one open lane, so I informed the cashier about the man who had been following me. The man didn't follow me to the checkout but instead wandered off into the clothing section across from the registers. The cashier acknowledged the oddity of the situation but didn't provide much more than that. I just wanted to go home, eat something, and get some rest. After completing my checkout, I walked toward the exit doors, making sure to glance around to ensure the creepy man wasn't following me again. Thankfully, he was nowhere in sight. Relieved, I left the store and proceeded through the parking lot toward my car. My vehicle was parked a bit away from the doors, not at the farthest end of the lot but not too close either. The parking lot was mostly empty, with a few scattered cars, presumably belonging to employees. Just as I started the engine and looked up, I noticed something alarming. A man was sprinting at full speed from the Walmart, heading straight toward my car. It was the same guy who had been following me earlier. The intensity of his run made it seem as though he was running for his life, yet he wasn't fleeing from anything or anyone. He was running toward me. Initially bewildered, I could only observe his rapid approach. However, as I realized he would reach my car within seconds, I quickly shifted into drive and swiftly left the scene. I managed to pull away just a couple of seconds before he would have reached me. He continued running until I was out of the parking lot and on the street, after which I was able to easily get away. I was left utterly perplexed by the entire encounter. Who was this man? Why did he follow me around the store? And why did he sprint toward me when I was in my car? The incident taught me a valuable lesson: to avoid going to Walmart in the middle of the night. I apologize for the incomplete sentence at the end. Here's the reformulated story with the same events. As a female, this incident occurred approximately 4 years ago while I was shopping at Walmart. At that time, I frequented the store regularly, including on this particular day. I only needed a few items, and it was nighttime, with a moderate level of customers in the store. Finding what I needed was quite effortless, and I spent around 10 minutes inside. During my shopping, a man approached me seemingly out of nowhere. He introduced himself. He stood at around 5 feet 8 inches with grayish hair. Something about him struck me as odd, and after chatting for about a minute, I felt uncomfortable and decided to leave. It appeared as though he followed me from the aisle where we initially encountered each other, which was located on the opposite end of the store. Upon reaching the self-checkout area, I noticed only 2 other people present, along with 6 registers. I proceeded to scan my items when I noticed the man once again. Instead of choosing an available register, he approached me directly and offered to pay for my items. I declined his offer, inquiring about his motive. He claimed he was trying to be nice, but I politely declined and said I would pay for my items myself. The man then left the store without making any purchases. After completing my checkout, I headed towards the exit and was shocked to find the man waiting outside. He greeted me once more and awkwardly asked if I wanted to come over to his house. Feeling unsettled, I declined his invitation and started walking away. Initially, he followed me for a few steps, but after a brief moment, he stopped and did not continue to pursue me. I reached my car and drove home, acknowledging that the encounter had been creepy. However, it didn't deter me from returning to that Walmart on several subsequent occasions. Around a month later, I found myself shopping there again, unaware of the previous encounter. While browsing the food section, I noticed the man's presence, triggering my memory. Realizing I had to avoid him, I quickly moved to the opposite end of the store to ensure I wouldn't run into him again. I started exploring different aisles, taking my time and observing random items. Despite my efforts, I spotted the man heading in my direction from a considerable distance. Recognizing the urgency, I swiftly moved away and concealed myself by navigating through various aisles. Ultimately, I decided to abandon my basket full of items and promptly left the store to prevent any potential interaction. I drove straight home without going through the checkout process. Following that incident, I refrained from returning to that specific Walmart for a while. Although I believe encountering the man again was coincidental, I was certain that he would attempt to engage with me if he saw me. It seemed he was a regular shopper at the store, and I wanted to avoid any further encounters. I used to work at Walmart a couple of years ago, and this remains my most peculiar encounter. My primary duty involved stocking shelves during the overnight shifts, which usually began at 9 p.m. The store, though massive, stayed open for the first 2 hours of my shift before closing. This late-night schedule was common at Walmart, given its size and the reduced customer traffic during those hours. On a particular night, I found myself assigned to the pets and supplies aisle, located at the back of the store. I had been working in that general vicinity earlier, but not in that specific aisle. It was approximately 11:30 p.m., and the store had officially closed at 11 o'clock, leaving us with an empty and quiet space for the last 30 minutes. With my headphones on, tuned into music to make the work more enjoyable, I suddenly caught sight of movement out of the corner of my eye. It seemed as if someone had walked by. Upon investigating, I found no one and assumed it might be a fellow coworker. Resuming my work, a few minutes later I again noticed someone at the aisle end, but this time the person didn't disappear. It wasn't a coworker. Instead, it was an unfamiliar man. When I focused on him, he promptly vanished behind the next aisle. I decided to investigate, walking down the aisles in pursuit and taking off my headphones. I radioed on my walkie-talkie, expressing concern about a potential intruder in the store. Despite the eerie encounter, I resumed my duties. An hour later, I found myself in the vast back room alone. To my disbelief, I spotted the man once again, this time hiding behind a box beneath a shelf. Trying not to draw attention, I altered my route and noticed him about 30 feet away when I turned back. Even with my headphones on, I heard noises behind me and sensed urgency. I sprinted toward the exit, footsteps echoing closely behind. Upon reaching the exit, I swung the door open, yet the man did not emerge. In a panic, I sought out a fellow Silver Knight worker, Al, who was stationed in electronics. I informed him of the situation, and despite my apprehension, we ventured back to the scene. As we opened the door to the back, we heard another door opening, this time leading to the outside. Those doors were rarely used. Hastening further inside, we caught sight of the man exiting the store, the door closing behind him, and just like that, he vanished. The mystery lingered. How did the man infiltrate the store undetected, managing to elude all employees until after closing time? I also wondered about his intention, especially considering his attempts to hide and follow me. Fortunately, I parted ways with that job not long after, still perplexed by the enigmatic events that unfolded that night. This incident occurred last year during a casual weeknight shopping trip to my local Walmart. The store was relatively quiet around 8 o'clock or 9 p.m., and after about 15 minutes of browsing, I found myself in the fitness items aisle, specifically eyeing a massage gun. The adjacent aisle happened to be the toy aisle, situated at the back corner of the store, where I overheard voices. Initially, I didn't pay much attention, engrossed in examining the massage gun. However, my curiosity heightened when I heard a man's voice saying, "I will buy you this toy if you come with me." While assuming it might be the child's father, an unsettling feeling lingered. The man mentioned, "Your mom said it's okay," and an eerie sense of unease overcame me as he persistently coached the child, urging them to leave. I couldn't shake the suspicion that he might not be the child's father. Deciding whether I was being nosy or needed to intervene, I walked by the aisle to take a quick glance. Entering the toy aisle, I saw a man in a black jacket and winter hat holding the hand of a little girl, leading her away. Their backs faced me, and to divert attention, I engaged the man in conversation, picking up a random toy and asking for his opinion, feigning nonchalance. He claimed he was just watching the girl and that they had to leave. Though not really convinced, I tried to dismiss my concerns as paranoia. However, about 30 seconds later, a woman's voice calling a name like Sarah reached my ears. The concerned mother confirmed that Sarah was her daughter, racing towards the front of the store. We reached the self-checkout area, where the man was purchasing a toy for the girl. The mother confronted him, and he, realizing the situation, attempted to flee. Despite a momentary escape through the store's doors, the girl was safe and reunited with her mother. It turned out the girl had wandered off while her mother shopped, and the man was apprehended shortly after the incident.